Hey, this is Bill Gladwell, and welcome to episode number 7 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. This episode, I sit down with comedian Andy Woodhull. Now, this past summer, Andy was the first comedian to make his network television debut on The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. He has also recently appeared on Comics Unleashed with Byron Allen, Gotham Comedy Live on AXS, and Comedy Central's Live at Gotham. Andy has appeared at many comedy festivals and contests, including the Bridgetown Comedy Festival, the Maui Comedy Festival, Just for Laughs Comedy Festival in Montreal, and the Great American Comedy Festival. He has been featured on the nationally syndicated Bob and Tom radio show and was a semi-finalist in CMT's Next Big Comic. He won the Best of the Midwest competition at Gilda's Laugh Fest in 2011, and then in 2012 his album was released called Lucy, and it was named one of the top 10 comedy albums of the year by ComedyReviews.com. Andy is a former resident of Chicago, where he was named one of the 4 comedians to watch by the Chicago Tribune. Andy and I talk about his upcoming Comedy Central special, wanting to be a writer, open mic opportunities, how comedians do not impress young kids, and when it's time to conduct a Q&A. If you haven't already subscribed to the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes and Stitcher. And when you do, leave a 5-star review, because I would really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter, at Bill Gladwell, and you can jump on my website with any questions or comments at BillGladwellLive.com. So enjoy episode 7 of the Hey Look at Me podcast. Because we take shots, promo shots of the show every once in a while. And this can patch right into the soundboard.
Oh,
and the
great.
sound comes right, so we can use our camera for that.
That's great.
So it's nice. How's the stress level with what's coming up here?
Oh.
Is it any
it's
better?
Fine. It's fine. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, just trying to figure everything out. I had to write out my set list today and send it to them. And I had a couple jokes that I added that I needed to send to get approval. So, everything's good though.
You got like 20 questions, you said.
Yeah, there's a ton of questions.
What's an example? Are you allowed to say?
Who's your favorite comedian?
Oh, just that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. How'd you get started? That's kind of just general question.
So is it a half-hour show that's going on? Or are they going to expand it with the questions in your stand-up?
The questions and everything is just for online.
Oh, it's online. Oh,
yeah.
Got it. Okay. And do you know when it's supposed to air yet?
Bonus. No, I have no idea. I don't think that they'll make the schedule probably until after they tape them all.
No. Tape them all?
They tape a whole season in 1 week.
Oh, do they really?
Yeah, they do 14 of them.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Wait. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I already got it on. So, when I did the first few podcasts, I forgot to introduce until about halfway through who it was, so it was a mystery.
Well, it probably says on your...
It does now. Yeah, I didn't think about that. At the time, though, we never introduced him. But,
yeah.
So, Andy Woodhull,
mm-hmm.
That's who we have.
Hello.
And comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm a comedian. What, you mean other titles?
Yeah, the title of comedian.
No, not really.
All right, so you do this full time?
Yeah.
Which I already knew, but
yeah.
Just if anybody's listening. Because sometimes you get waiter and actor.
Mm-hmm. No, not an actor. I've tried being a writer, but no one's really paid me to do it yet, so I don't think I can say that.
Who do you want to
write
write
for? But I'm a
for?
comedian. I like to write for television. Anybody that would hire me, I would take a job. If there's anybody that works at a television show right now listening to this,
or thinking about a television
I would
show,
be happy to work for you.
How do you even get a job as a writer on a television show?
I don't know. I can't tell you because I haven't been able to do it yet.
I mean, I know Louis C.K. What he wrote for SNL. But how do you get that?
Well, I mean, I don't know how you can get it. How you try to get it is shows like SNL will send out like a call for writers where they have a packet that they want. It's like 5 sketches, 5 late night jokes, or weekend update jokes, and something else. You know, they have like these are the things that you need to give us to submit to write. I submitted one time. I didn't get hired.
How long ago was that?
I don't know, probably 5 years ago or so, something like that.
The bar, you don't have to. I'm stuttering around here. I'm going to ask you how old you were, and some comedians will say I'm 29, but they're really 50. But do you give your
I'm
real
35.
age? 35.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm not doing that.
And a week from, this is Saturday. Next Friday, I turn 44.
Well,
so I remember. I don't know if it's congratulations or not. So
you made it. You made it to 44.
But growing up, I grew up. I was 8 or 9 in the 70s, and then the 80s, and I watched SNL because my parents watched it.
Yeah.
And the bar is not high, I don't think, nowadays.
I don't know. I mean, that's debatable. I think they have some really funny sketches on there, and I think it's generational. I think probably if you talk to younger people, they would love it more than you love it. You know what I mean?
So?
Like, people are in love with their generation of Saturday Night Live. I'm Chris Farley, Adam Sandler, David Spade. That was the best Saturday Night Live to me.
To me too, yeah.
But when they were there, people were saying they weren't as good as the last people. So I think it's generational. I think there's some really funny people on there.
Maybe it's just me then, because I watch it now. But that feeling that I get, that it's just not as funny as it used to be. But maybe I'm not getting.
I think it's always going to be like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So what else would you write for? I mean, we talked about Saturday Night Live, TV shows.
I wrote a sitcom pilot.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Starring yourself?
I probably wouldn't star in it because I'm not an actor. But
well, I've seen a lot of shows where they didn't have actors on.
But yeah, it's just based on my stand-up. Yeah, it's a guy marries a girl that has 2 kids and becomes a stepfather, and
Yeah, that sounds like you.
That's exactly what it is. That's a really good pitch for the show, I think. I'm surprised it hasn't sold to anyone yet. Persistence is the secret, I think. Don't give up. Don't be offended. The number one advice I give to young comedians is when people don't email you back, don't feel like they did it on purpose. Just email them again. That's the most important thing as far as getting yourself booked goes, is they didn't not write back because they hate you. They didn't write back because they got 100 emails that said, "Can I work at your club?" And so you just have to be persistent about that. It's a hard thing to get over, too. You send an email and you're like, why the fuck didn't they write back to me? They must hate me. But they don't. They're just so indifferent that you have to have sent them an email at the time that they're booking.
Right.
Early in your career when no one knows who you are. That's my number one advice I give to people that are trying to get booked. Don't be upset if people don't write you back. Just write them again until they're.
That's interesting that you said that, because I end the podcast, each podcast, with and we don't have to talk about it now. We'll wait till the end. But what's the most important thing? If you could say give one piece of advice, what would you give? And I use the example because I think that's it. Persistence is the number one thing that I would recommend to people. The only reason I'm here, and some of my friends that do the same thing aren't, is because they didn't stick with it.
Yeah, it's really important, and not just in your bookings and networking stuff, but persistence in writing and getting on stage. Just if you can outwork everyone and outlast everyone, eventually you're going to get really good, and then things will happen. And
it's outlasting people that think you're nuts. And really, why don't you get a real job? And your friends are saying, "Oh, you're kind of funny," and but they don't understand that it's the persistence and getting better and improvement over time, and that's how you get to where
one of
you're
the best things that anyone ever said to me, an older comedian, as far as something I think about all the time, it was Tom Wilson. He played, Tom Wilson?
I know, yeah.
He played Biff on Back to the Future, for anyone that maybe doesn't know him. Also been in many other movies. And he's a stand-up comedian. He was in The Departed. He was in
The Departed. He was. That's right. I couldn't name one.
So here's what he told me, and I think about this all the time. He said to me, I don't know anyone in my 30 or 40 years in this business, whatever he said, I don't remember the number. I don't know anyone that had talent and worked hard that didn't eventually get a chance. And that's something I think about all the time. It's like, you have talent, or you probably wouldn't be doing it. So all that's left is to work hard and wait.
Yeah. That's true. Mm-hmm. I had Dean Napolitano. Do you know who he is or know of him?
No.
He is from New York originally, but he lives down in Florida, I believe, now. And he's 45. Good. He's really good, and he's got a movie coming out in September, on September 11th, with
Mhm.
Woody Harrelson. And but his movie though, he plays somebody that gets killed, I believe, at some point. So it's not a
Sure.
Woody Harrelson role, but he says, and I kind of agree with him because I get the same feeling that as I get older, and as he gets older, he says, you know what? There's a whole list of comics that didn't make it until they were 50. And he says, I'm sure when I'm 51, there's some, like Rodney Dangerfield didn't make it to his late 50s. And so it keeps moving forward. You keep having these new goals and new role models, but it is persistence. It's just sticking to it. And more opportunities open up as you. Now, did you always want to be a comedian, or when did you decide that's the profession?
I think that I always wanted to be a comedian. And I've told this on other podcasts before, but I didn't know that there were comedians. I mean, I knew of Seinfeld and Chris Rock, and I assumed there was like 4 or 5 other guys. And I thought that's how many comedians there were. I didn't know about clubs across the country. I didn't know there were comics working that weren't famous. And so once I found out about that, then I was like, oh, maybe I could be a comedian. Before that, it was always like, wouldn't it be awesome? But obviously, there's like 4 guys. So
what age were you thinking this? I mean, when you first started to
I guess
that?
High school. Well, no, I didn't really realize it until I started going to open mic night, and that was after college, so I was 23. But in high school, I was a huge fan of Seinfeld. I would watch Seinfeld. He wrote a book that I read. Other people wrote books about him that I read, and I loved Seinfeld. And then when I got to college, I had a little notebook that I would write jokes in, but I didn't do stand-up until I was 23 and had graduated. And then, even then, I did this open mic night at the St. Louis Funny Bone, and I thought that it went really well. And the way that you signed up for the open mic night was, it was an online sign-up. So you put your name, and then there's a little spot for comments, and then you click sign up, and then the day before the open mic night, it's posted on the internet who's got a spot at the open mic night. So I did it my first time, and then the next week I did it, and then I wasn't put on the list, and I was like, I guess that's it. I guess I didn't make the cut, because I thought it was like a tryout, and you would keep coming.
Oh, got it.
So I thought that I just didn't make it. So I was like, well, I guess that's over. And then I randomly bumped into a comic, his name's Gabe Kia, at a concert, and he was like, why don't you come to open mic night anymore? And I was like, oh, I didn't make it. And then he explained how stupid I was. Like, that's not how it works at all. What you have to do is just show up until they start putting you on. They're not looking to help anyone, really. They want you to try.
So this would have been, what, around 97 or something like that?
No, this was 2003.
Oh, 2003. Mm-hmm. How has open mic changed, if at all, since 2003 until today?
Well, I don't know, really, because I guess I started in St. Louis. And open mic in St. Louis was completely different than open mic in Chicago. I spent most of my time doing stand-up in Chicago. And in St. Louis, it was great. I think it was the perfect place to start doing stand-up, for me at least, because there was a community of comics that would come every week that would write together on a regular basis. And local headliners would come and host the open mic night and give advice and be supportive. And I think that was just the best. It was the best. People like Greg Warren and Ron Ramey would come and host the open mic night and be available to answer questions of annoying
very nice
new comics. They're so generous with their time. And so it was great. So that was my first year of stand-up. I got to do it.
This was in St. Louis?
In St. Louis. In that environment that was super supportive. And then in Chicago, it's different, where it's supportive, but it's all people... the open mics are all comics at the shows, generally. Sometimes there's some audience, but it's mostly comics. Whereas the St. Louis club, where I started, for some reason, and there's other clubs like it in the country, people go to that open mic. Just like, it's a good every time, because they care about the comics they're putting on, and they have someone good hosting. So it's like, oh, open mic, that's a fun night. That's not a night where we're going to go watch 30 people bomb. It's like, we're going to go watch 10 people do okay, try out new things, maybe a couple people will bomb. But in Chicago, it was mostly bar open mic nights. where which can be kind of brutal, but it also makes you strong. I think as a comic, it kind of gets you over, helps to get you over bombing anyway, and it helps to like try to get the attention of a smaller audience.
A lot of the clubs you can buy your way into an open night now if you bring 5 or 6 or 7 of your friends in.
Yeah, and those exist, and unfortunately those have to exist because it's like a magical thing when an open mic night is a popular night at the comedy club. It was like that in St. Louis, and the one in Minneapolis at Acme is like that. It's like sold out every week. People love it. I think the one at Comedy Club on State in Wisconsin is really good. Go Bananas in Cincinnati, people come out. It's like a magic thing when there's a community that's supportive of their local open mic night. Because they're not always good, but when they're good, they're the most fun night of comedy.
I've been to some really good ones. I mean, sat through them, not participated in them. And I've been to some really bad ones also. And I know the difference. It's because I don't hate that I'm there and I'm not getting a good show. Being a performer myself, I feel bad for the person on stage because I know what they're going through when they are out there. And what is, for anybody listening, what is the purpose of an open mic for the comedian?
Well, that's where you learn how to become a comedian. I mean, when you're first starting, that's where you can go and do comedy. It's like there's not, if you wanna write novels, like you can't. It would be hard to just write a novel and then make someone read it. But with stand-up, you decide you want to do it, and then immediately you go try it, get instant feedback, and that's how you learn to be good. It's how you learn to get rhythm for your jokes. It's how you learn to figure out what works. And by watching, 10 other comics on the show every night, you see what works for other people, and you can figure out what would be best for you. And then afterwards, once you've been doing it for a long time, it's still valuable because even if you've been doing stand-up a long time, I've been doing it 12 years, and sometimes it's nice to go to open mic night and do all new material and be scared that it's not going to work and see if it can exist outside of your set, because sometimes a joke, and this if you do a bunch of jokes that work, and then I throw in a new joke is how I typically do a new joke in my set. But you go to open mic night and do new jokes, then you really know if it's working because it's not sandwiched between all stuff that works all the time.
Yeah, I asked you that question because I think a lot of people maybe have been to open mics, and some of them may have participated listening to this and been on stage. But I've seen, and I want to know if you've seen it too, as I watched from the audience week after week after week, and the same people came back each week, and they didn't tweak their act. They just kept doing the same thing and not getting the same response in the same places week after week. And I'm sure that when you did it, well, I'm sure of it because you're here, that you actually tweaked. You saw the
well, there's there's these two different schools of it where when I started, the focus was on when you're doing open mic night, you're trying to get a tight 5 minutes that you can use to MC at the club. Yeah. That's what you want, and the guy that booked the club would watch the open mic night, and he was scouting for new MCs, and he would watch every week. And in other open mic nights, there's pressure to do a different 5 minutes every week because it's mostly other comics watching that saw you. So you build material faster, but you don't get that real tight thing that you could take to a club and sell yourself. And they're both good. I mean, there's both. I think there's good things about doing it both ways, of generating a ton of material. And I also think there's a lot of value in doing things and tweaking them until they're tight and work really well. Yeah. So that you can kill, Yeah. I mean, that's something I tell comics all the time because they'll be telling me how much material they're coming up with, and that's great. That's great. You should always be coming up with a ton of material. But guys like Louis C.K. and Bill Burr have to come up with new material every year because everyone saw all their jokes. Yes. If you're not famous, everyone didn't see all your jokes. So those guys weren't coming up with a new hour of material every year when they were starting. I doubt. I mean, I'm not friends with them, but I doubt they were coming up with a new hour material, they were tightening what they had and making it better and adding to it. And then they got to a point where it was so good that people were like, oh, we've all seen it. We need more. And then you have to start generating it. But I'm not saying it's bad to generate. I think both things are good. You can't do one without the other, though.
And you're right, because even in the business that I'm in, I see other mentalists or other magicians, and they will try to change up their entire act or be too many things to too many people. And they try to please too many people is what it is. The set that you have now, how long have you had it? I mean, because you talk about have you only been married for like 4 years?
I've been married for almost 2 years.
2 years. So your set is a whole lot of that material. So
I came out with an album in 2008, was my first album, and then my next one was 2012, and then I just did one this year, 2015.
How different is the 2008 one from the material you do now? Is it the material quite a bit different?
I do maybe one of the jokes. I've been doing a couple of the jokes this week because my set's all disjointed. because I'm
recording.
I'm doing a half-hour special next week. And so to get ready for it, I've been opening my hour-long set with the half hour that I want to do for the special, which is the half hour of my strongest jokes. So then the second half hour of this club set, I kind of have to just drag from different things to fill it up. So I have been doing a couple jokes off of that 2008 album. But I think that album's still me. I think there's funny stuff on it. Most of it I can't remember. But also when you hear it, I'm a young comic. I'm talking really fast. I probably sound more like Mike Birbiglia than I want to sound like, because he was one of my heroes when I was starting, and I wrote jokes that sounded like his jokes. Yeah, and that first album I put out, probably I wasn't even ready to put it out, but I was featuring on the road. I wanted to quit my job. And
what'd you do?
I worked in a lab. I have a geology degree. I worked for this company that sold clay.
Really?
Yeah. But I knew I needed merch, so I made a CD. It's only 35 minutes. There's still some solid jokes on
I bet there are. I bet there are. What was the point that you decided that you just had to quit the job and go full-time into it?
Well, I was getting burnt out because I quit my job in 2008. And I had been working there for, I think, 5 years. And maybe only 4 years. And the whole time I was doing stand-up and working the job. It was a job. It was salary positions, like 40-plus hours a week. And then as soon as the job was over, I would go to open mic nights or I would go do paid shows. And if I was booked on the road, as long as I could drive it, I would come back and work the next day. So I was killing myself. I would go do shows that were 6 hours away, do the show, drive back, sleep in the parking lot at work, go to work, drive back to the club 6 hours away, do the show.
Cow.
And I did that solid for, 2-3 years, where I was getting a lot of bookings on the road. And I was really burnt out. And I was like, I'm not going to get better at either one of these things if I don't choose one. And my thinking was, I'm probably never going to regret the job, you know what I mean? It'd be I could definitely see staying at the job and being like, oh man, I could have been a comedian. But I even though I love that job, I don't have many feelings of like, oh, I could have been the best geologist.
Well, do you think that's what? I would say that's what sets me apart is doing that kind of stuff that nobody else wants to do. Do you think that's part of the persistence?
I think it's easily part of the persistence. But it's not the only way. I mean, there's other ways to make it to where I'm at right now. Like, everybody has a different path. That's what I did. But other people move to New York or move to LA or even in Chicago and just do local shows and local shows and local shows. And then you start getting festivals, and then festivals get you TV. And that's another way that a lot of people did it. I kind of got to where I'm at from the road. So that's just my story, I guess.
There's advantages and disadvantages of both. I thought about moving to Vegas before I moved down here, and I've always wanted to move to New York or something. But with the family, it's better not to do that. So
and I was in LA before I got married for a year, and we were dating while I was in LA, and then it was kind of like I wasn't enjoying my days off as much, and I would go fly to Raleigh where my wife lives and hang
From
out
LA?
for the weekend. Yeah,
That's a lot of time on the plane for the weekend.
Well, most of the clubs I work are in the Midwest, so it would usually just be like, oh, I have 2 days off. Instead of going to LA, I'm going to go to Raleigh.
Okay.
And yeah, I really like having a family. I think it makes me a better comedian too, because I'm living a life of a regular person. There's more things that happen to me throughout the day than when I was just living alone as a comic.
What's the age range of your kids?
11 and 13.
What do they think about the whole thing?
I think it's hard to tell. I think they think it's cool, but they're also like not impressed with me very much. I think that they think it's cool, but my older stepdaughter will still be like embarrassed if I try to pick her up in front of her. Not like physically pick her up, but she's like, just wait there and I'll come to you. And, you know, if I honk the horn, she'll get embarrassed.
That's
or if
a
I
teenager
go and try to
dad
hug
thing,
her.
right?
Yeah, I mean, and in my head, I'm like, I'm cool. Don't your friends think that I'm on TV? But they don't. They're not. They think it's neat, but I don't think they're that impressed by it.
Well, you're doing Comedy Central. You're recording that Tuesday. What have you been on TV before?
Yeah,
you've been on like
I've been on
Conan
I've
and the
been on
Tonight
the
Show.
Tonight Show, and I was on Comedy Central in 2009, a show they used to have called Live at Gotham.
So do the kids, their friends think that it's cool, or they just nobody thinks it's cool? So.
Maybe their friends think it's cool, but if their friends thought it was cool, I don't know that they would be running home and being like, "My friends think you're so cool."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My oldest one did tell me the other day that she told her friends that I was doing a half-hour special, and no one believed her. And she said, well, why don't you Google it? And so they Googled my name, and then it came up that I was doing a half-hour special, and they're like, well, that doesn't prove anything. Their reasoning was, he has a different last name than you. They didn't believe that I was her stepdad because we don't have the same last name. I was like, well, that's not really how it works. And we had a good laugh together about how ridiculous her friends were being.
So do they want you to work some kind of signal into the special so they know?
No. I mean, and as far as the special goes, I'm not going to encourage them to watch it. My wife's not going to encourage them to watch it. I mean, there's jokes about sex, and there's nothing in the special that is any worse than things that they've seen in PG-13
That's right,
movies.
yes.
There's nothing in it that's anything worse than that. But, and this is what I told the older one, because she's probably the one more likely to try to watch it. I said, there's nothing in it any worse than what you saw in Pitch Perfect. But there's jokes about sex. And if I was you, I don't know if I would want to hear my stepdad tell jokes about sex. So, just fair warning before you try to watch it. I don't know if that was the right parenting thing to do or not.
I'm trying to think what I would do. My kids range from 8 all the way up to, well, you met my son, who's almost 20. And, I wouldn't have a problem with him watching it. My daughter, who's 13, I would probably be okay with her watching it, but the younger two, I'd probably Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. So you're not going in and emceeing any talent shows for the school?
No. If they asked me to, maybe I would. I mean, I can be clean enough for kids, I think. It wouldn't be my first choice, but...
Well, I wouldn't even call you... Are you cleaning it up for this club here?
Well, they told me not to say fuck, so I've just not been saying fuck. But
it should slip through a couple times, but not a big
maybe
deal. Yeah, but not a big deal. But the thing is...
When you do crowd work, it's hard not to say fuck, and I've had to do a lot of crowd work.
But your content doesn't...
Yeah.
Well, can we share what happened last night? Because I think you had your first ever Q&A at the end of the show.
Yeah, just the show was petering out. Everyone had paid their check. They weren't into it most of the show anyway, but it also wasn't like they hated me. I don't think
they loved it. They just
didn't like to laugh out loud, and so the last 10 minutes we just did a Q&A like I was I don't know who does Q&As. Seinfeld does Q&As as encore.
Yeah, because I think somebody yelled out, "Who makes you laugh?"
Oh yeah.
That's how it started.
They had real questions.
That is funny. It was. I was sitting back here dying though when I was watching that. But yeah, it's well, I mean, just the content though. The content's the same, right? Of what you do here.
Yeah, no, I didn't. There's nothing I left out. I'm not real dirty. I mean,
No,
as far as comedy, I'm kind of considered clean, but there's jokes about sex, and it's weird for
it is
whatever reason.
Yeah, but I wonder. They probably know more than what we did at that age.
They definitely know. Oh my gosh, my wife and I try to like. She can watch an R-rated movie if we've already seen it and we think that there's nothing too bad in it, you know? And then the other day we were walking the dog and there's this electrical box or whatever. This box, I don't know what it's for. It's on the street. I think it's some electricity thing. And it's at her bus stop. It's her bus stop. And there's just Sharpie all over it with like cartoons of people fucking and stuff that like bang my pussy all night long, just the most profane things you could imagine, boobs just drawn on there. And that's her bus stop. One of her friends clearly did that, or she had. I hope that she didn't have a part in it. We asked her about it. We said we saw caught some of that artwork your friends did up by the bus stop, and she was really embarrassed.
And the clubs, what's the average size club that you do?
I do more smaller clubs than big. This club's 100 seats. That's good for me.
Is it?
That's good. A good size. I mean, I certainly do some bigger clubs, and those are great too. It depends on the club. This is a new club. Other clubs have a following and telemarket to fill 200, but maybe I should be more arrogant. But in a given week, people that came because they knew who I was is only, I don't know, generously 20 to 30 people. Unless it's a city I've been to a lot of times. Like this week, I don't know, maybe not that many people.
No, but I did, to stroke your ego a little bit, I did get a call from someone today, and he said, "Who's playing tonight?" And I said, "Andy Woodhull." And he said, "Oh, where do I know that name from?" I said, "Well, he's been on Conan." I went through the whole thing. And I said, "He's on the Bob and Tom show." He goes, "That's it." He goes, "I listened to the Bob and Tom show." He goes, "But I don't know who he is." And I said, "On Bob and Tom." I said, "He talks about the paper cranes."
Oh, yeah.
He goes, "Oh, I love that guy." So he went ahead and bought tickets for tonight.
Oh,
and
that's great.
He's coming because it's his wife's
really great.
birthday, so he's bringing in his wife for her birthday.
So, yeah, so stuff like that happens, but I would say the majority of the audience is seeing me because they wanted to see comedy that night.
Yeah.
And my hope is then if I go back to that city, they'll come again. And that has been happening. I mean, maybe you'll see next year if that happens or not.
Yeah, because a lot of people aren't the aficionados of comedy like I am. I mean, I know least of most of the comics. I know at least of them, but people don't. Really.
Yeah.
And I listen to Bob and Tom daily, and because I had the VIP podcast that I listen to, and so on my own time. But I don't know how dedicated most people are because I like comedy. I like comedy, but a lot of people just do show up to.
Yeah, and that's great. It's great when people do that. I love it. I love making people laugh that didn't know that I was going to be funny. I love sitting in the back of the room or saying hi to people when they come in and then being just clueless. In some clubs you have to take an elevator up. I'll be in the elevator with the people before the show. Like I like this level of celebrity where they just paid to see me perform stand-up and they don't recognize me before the show. I could be standing next to a poster with my picture on it.
As they talk about you.
I wonder if this guy's good or not.
in the elevator. You think he's going to be good tonight?
Yeah.
Do you ever answer him?
Sometimes I do. And I'll say, "Oh, I hear that he's really good." And then after the show, they'll be like, "Oh, that was you." And you were saying,
I hear he's going to be crappy. It's not going to be a good time tonight at all. It's funny because we have people that come in here, and on the nights that I do my full show, my wife hosts, and she seats people out here, and she runs the sound and lights for me too. And people will come in, and they're grumpy with her, and they look at her as the host, or they say, "Hey, can I get a drink?" And she goes, "Well, I'm just helping seat." And she goes, "Your server will be with you in a minute at the club here." And then I get on stage, and on the nights that I'm on stage for the full show, I said I like to give a round of applause to my wife that sits in the back, and you can see on their face the people that did that when they came in. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, so We got to wrap it up here only because it's almost
Okay.
7 o'clock and we got to get the room set up for tonight. And we talked about persistence at the beginning of the podcast. But what is that you think that's what really makes the difference? I mean, if you could choose one thing, is it the thing that makes the difference?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best way to sum it all up. I think the best advice I give to anyone trying to start is just write and get on stage. Then do it as much as you can and try to outwork everybody else. If you can write 10 minutes a day, if you can write 40 minutes a week, however you break it up, you're ahead of so many people, because comics are lazy and we don't have good discipline about sitting down and writing jokes. But when you write new jokes and force yourself to use that muscle, you just get better and better at it. And so write jokes and go on stage.
I know what my answer would be, but how much time do you mentally spend every day thinking about stand-up?
I don't know. I mean, it's always there. It's always in the back of my head. It's always like, oh, that is a joke right there.
Yeah.
You know? So it's not a constant, like, I'm not on all the time. I think people that are on all the time can sometimes be irritating, but I am aware of things that are going on.
Yes.
And constantly, is this a joke? Not to a point that I can't function in society or anything, but yeah, I definitely stuff happens, and
no, but it's always on your mind.
Always there. Yeah.
Same with mine. And at the end of my show, the last thing I do in my full show is I have a woman come up, and I say, I want to borrow you and your cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And what I really need her to do is use her calculator on her cell phone. But as she walks up, I said, now as we get towards the end of this, you're going to unlock it for me. I'm going to call some of your contacts, and I'm going to talk to them. So just be ready for that. And so she's nervous the whole time she's up here. And when we get to the time that I want her to use the calculator, I said, now unlock your phone and pull up your contacts for me. And they all do. And I have it in my hand. And I'm trying to figure it out that every day, it's been on my mind for 3 weeks now, because it hit me 3 weeks ago that I have the cell phone in my hand. There's got to be something that I can do that will add to the show. And I haven't come up with it yet, but I'm sure you have things like that. You get things that happen, and you're trying to form or formulate how it's going to go into the show. And it drives me nuts until I get it in the show. And then
tell them you're just going to look through the photos real quick.
I didn't think about that, but that's...
Let me just look through the photos real quick.
And send a couple over.
Yeah, especially a young girl.
Yes.
Tell her you're going to look through the photos.
Yeah, and that's who I usually have up on stage, because it's a show. So I usually I'm looking for people that will cooperate on stage, but also people that look good up on stage for the photos that we put up on the fan page and stuff. But that's not a bad idea. Especially, start sending them over to the contacts too. That would be bad. So you go from here, back home for a night. Is that it?
Yeah, and then not even tonight. A night. I'll go tomorrow to Boston. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're there just until Wednesday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then you go back. You got anything?
And then I'll go home.
Go home. Mm-hmm. How many weeks out of a year do you work?
Between 45 and 50, I would say. A lot.
That's most of them.
A lot, yeah.
That's almost all of them.
A lot. This year maybe it's not going to be as... The beginning of this year, I think I just had my first week off last week. And I intentionally took it off because my daughter had a play that she had a big part in. But summer's slower for stand-up, so I have a few weeks off coming up.
Does your family travel with you at any point on any of those?
Not often. They have in the past. Like if I'm doing stuff on the coast here that's close to Raleigh and they don't have school, they'll come.
And we talked about that.
Yeah.
I said bring them down next time. We'll schedule around.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
But it's never easy because they have activities, and every other weekend they're at their dad's, and so it's got to kind of be a perfect storm for it to work out. And also I do it, but if I'm going to take them somewhere for vacation, I would like to not have to leave at night to do shows. That's right. You've probably maybe had some working vacations, which is great because it pays for the vacation, but then it's like, oh, well, I didn't get to have dinner with my family every night of this trip,
Well, how long do you want to be doing this? Do you have
I want to be doing stand-up forever. I mean,
do you really?
I don't know that I want to be doing 45 to 50 weeks on the road anymore, but I want to do stand-up forever. I want, my dream would be that 20 years from now I'm still doing stand-up, and maybe 20 years from now people come to see me, and that would be the best. And that's my goal.
It would be. Well, I get some in here that they have, they're using this as a stepping stone to get into the movies or on TV or something. So everybody has different goals. That's why I was asking. And at this point, I like doing what I do too. I like doing it, and I want to do more stuff, but I always see myself doing this. It's just there. All right. Any? Well, you know what? What if people listen to this want to get a hold of you to book you or whatever? How do they get a hold of you?
My website is andywoodhull.com. You can contact me through the website or my agent, and I have 3 albums on iTunes and Amazon. Just look up Andy Woodhull, Woodhull.
I'm glad you spelled that. Mm-hmm. I was downstairs in the restaurant, at the bar, the lounge downstairs, and this was Wednesday, so the first night that you were here, and they said, "Who do you have?" And I said, "Andy Woodhull." And they said, "He's still around? Does he get his pay?" I said, "No, you're thinking of Andy Warhol. It's not the same guy." So.
Not the first time that's happened to me.
He's not around anymore, I don't think, though, is he?
No, he passed away.
That's what a while back. A while back. And so a little alcohol and a little bit of not educated will make you think he's still alive, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thanks for doing the
no problem.
Podcast.
Happy to do it.
We'll have a good night tonight, and at least somebody in the crowd though.
Yeah,
is coming just for you.
To see me.
Yeah, that's right. So thanks a lot, Andy.